Some of my favorite video games ever have included time travel, like the masterpiece Chrono Trigger, and the new game Omensight also has a time gimmick to it. But is this a terrific time-traveling tale, or should this one just be lost to another time and space? Omensight comes to us from the same developer that brought us Stories Path of Destinies that came out a couple of years ago, and was actually one of my first reviews I ever did on my channel. Omensight, though, is not a sequel to Stories. It's a spiritual successor, though the game is very, very similar. In fact, almost too similar. In the game, you're taking the role of a harbinger who arrives at the end of the world. There's been a mass war, there's lots of chaos, multiple sides have been fighting with one another, and you get to kind of sort out what's been going on and potentially save them from their own destruction. And this is how the whole time-traveling aspect ends up coming in. After the opening bit to the game, you're dropped into the hub, where you're basically told you can pick how you want the story to unfold. You pick a side to start with. As you go down one path, you'll run into other characters, unlock new paths, and start to learn little bits of truth here and there on what actually happened and what caused the world to end the way it did. Similar to the likes of Majora's Mask or Lightning Returns, you have a limited time before the world ends up ending, so you only get a few choices before you have to go back to the beginning and do things again, hopefully choosing a different path or at least getting something new unlocked so that your next run doesn't end up being useless. If you happen to have played Stories, you'll know exactly how this ends up working, with you getting to the end and then having to go all the way back to the beginning, a lot of times playing the same areas and the same levels over and over again. Though in Stories, I honestly felt there was more variety to a lot of the areas that you got to go to. Here in Omensight, you do some of the same places so many times that you just want to start pulling your hair out before you end up getting to the end. Thankfully, I was able to kind of get the right pieces together relatively quickly, so I only had to replay things a handful of times, but even then it started to grind on me. The core gameplay of the action, hack and slash, and platforming is decent enough. There are some camera issues here and there. A couple of times I ended up getting killed even though I was in a cutscene. I ended up jumping off the edge at the wrong time, and the game didn't lock my character when shifting the camera around, but other than that, that worked perfectly fine. Just like with Stories, the combat is kind of that free-flow, Batman Arkham style of combat. There's a lot of countering that you're able to do, and a lot of jumping around from one enemy to another. Some strong and weak attacks, and you get new abilities as you progress, as you level up your character by getting the various experience from killing all the monsters. The combat is perfectly fun. There's nothing wrong with it other than when you have to do the same battles over and over and fight the same basic enemies. There's not a lot of variety when it comes to the enemies, and there are a few types of enemies, depending upon the area that you're in, that can be a bit more troublesome to hit, such as flying enemies, where I would go to attack them in midair and end up causing my character to fall straight down into a pit. Thankfully, this doesn't completely end up making you restart a level, just back to the previous checkpoint, but it's annoying enough. The best thing about Omensight, though, for me, is the story, the characters, and the development you get as you slowly piece together what happened. Who betrayed who? What was the exact starting point of what caused this cataclysm to end up occurring? If you can get into the story and you like the characters, you'll have a much, much funner time with it, and the whole grind of doing certain areas over and over again won't be so bad. From the technical side of things, the game didn't crash on me, but there was a lot of slowdown. Almost every battle and going across the map, especially as things got bigger in the more broad areas, it would always slow down just for a second or two, not for too long, but still noticeable, and would end up putting a damper on my gameplay. Omensight is available now on the PlayStation 4 and PC for $19.99, and it does have a Platinum Trophy on the PS4. Overall with Omensight, I'm torn. I like the narrative and the world. I just don't think the game was much of an evolution from Stories, though the story flows a bit better here. It just wasn't enough changed. The combat's still decent enough, and if you liked Stories a lot, you're gonna love this game. It's pretty much identical in all the best ways, just with a better way of giving the narrative, as you get to unlock pieces of the story that you need by doing different parts of the levels. So even though you're repeating the stage, you get to go to a new hallway and thus see a new cutscene, learn some new info, or get a new ability that will help you advance the story that bit farther. When you finally piece everything together and get that final run, it's satisfying, but it doesn't take many hours to get to that point. Unless you absolutely adored Stories, you may want to wait a little bit for a sale, but as it sits, I'm going to be giving the game a 6 out of 10. But anyway guys, to wrap up this review, I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course I hope you enjoyed.